Last one. Hi, I'm Trace. Thanks for tuning into my show. This is Uno Dos of Trace, and this is episode 5, where we're talking about origins of humanity. As the non-corporeal poet once said, 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck, right? But as much as I love that movie, 10,000 years, it's a long time. If someone put the genie in a lamp for 10,000 years, he hadn't come out since the Bronze Age. Would he recognize humans when he pops out of the Cave of Wonders in 10,020? I mean, who knows? Would we all be nice and mocha-colored, living in a climate ravaged by heat, starving, with a huge disparity between the rich and the... Holy crap, is Aladdin in the future? Welcome, learners. Again, Trace here. This is my show. Thank you so much for watching. Every month I break open a topic we thought we knew, only to find out that we actually didn't almost know anything. And this is the 5th of 5 episodes on human origins. It's why we're here and where we're going. So sub, like, share, all those promotional things. Thank you so much. When I was a kid, I read this book by Brian W. Aldiss called Starship. It was about these humans who live in a jungle called the Ponics. It had strange day-night cycles and giant mutants called the Outsiders. Come to find out, spoiler, after 23 generations aboard a starship bound for another star system, 500 years on board one ship, the humans there had regressed. They'd lost their cumulative culture. And this book came out in 1958. And so these people living on this ship, this was obviously considered the very, very far future at the time, they didn't know how to do anything technological. 10,000 years ago, farming was the newest technology. Woolly mammoths had just gone extinct. The newest tech, farming, it's lit. It grows on you. And yet, evolutionary psychologists at UC Santa Barbara say that the last 10,000 years of human evolution occurred 100 times faster than at any other period in our species' history. Homo sapiens are only 50,000 years old, but we are becoming more alike, according to their findings, all the time. Super exciting. More research is definitely needed. Like Starship, we don't want to regress. We want to continue moving forward. And we hope that we don't end up trapped in a tiny little starship that is the size of our planet, if you get my kind of stretched metaphor here. So I thought I would look forward, hypothetically, where we could be in 100 years, and 1,000 years, and 10,000 years, based on what we have learned about our past and where we came from. So to help me, I called Anna Goldfield of the Dirt podcast, who did an episode about this exact thing.
My name's Anna Goldfield. I am an archaeologist, a writer, a podcaster. I want people to be as excited about those stories as I am, so I'm a science communicator, which is why I'm talking to you.
Okay, first, Anna, some assumptions. These hypothetical humans, they want to be multiplanetary, they want to continue advancing without destroying ourselves, and we do not want to go extinct from asteroids or climate disasters. So we're just going to assume all of that is true. So 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years from now. First, 100 years, Anna, go.
So we can kind of use the past just to give us a template for speculating on. If you go from the Civil War to now, it's 150 years or so. And medicine has improved a whole lot. And so I think that if we sort of transpose that over to genetics, I think, yes, genetics, we will learn a whole lot more about the human genome. We will learn a lot more because there's still a lot we don't know about gene expression and about epigenetics, which is where little molecules along the sides of the DNA can be kind of chemically switched on or off, determining whether or not those genes will be expressed. And so manipulating that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing you see a headline where it's like, scientists gave chickens a dinosaur tail. It's like, great. All about coulda, not shoulda. But I think those are the types of things that we'll start to see 100 years from now is gene editing, maybe not so much in humans, but in the things that humans control and exploit like animals.
That's a good point. 100 years, actually not that far in the future, geologically or evolutionarily speaking. So if knowledge and technology are doubling, eventually, things are going to coalesce. Imagine that technology reaches a point where we can cyborg it up. The knowledge of the genome is such that we know every gene and what it does, or we will in 100 years.
I mean, real geneticists know way more about this stuff than I do. But in terms of the what I know that we understand from the human genome and from, the Neanderthal genome, maybe we'll know more about our hominin relatives and ancestors. And we can, understand things about our intermixing from that. There's way more to be excited about than to be fearful about. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, ooh, Jurassic Park didn't go so great.
So let's mix Ray Kurzweil's singularity, the idea that man and machine will merge, which is supposedly coming up pretty soon, and CRISPR, or CRISPR-Cas9, the gene editing system. It might not be CRISPR-Cas9 by 100 years from now. Maybe we figured out a better way or a different way to do it. But if you merge those two technologies of digital technology and that precision with genetic manipulation, then technology and humans their adaptation could be point and click. You want to move to Mars? Cool. We'll go ahead and engineer your kid to resist radiation, and the kid will resist it forever, and so will their offspring. On and on and on. Probably sounds weird to us 21st century minds to even consider modifying our offspring, but in the 22nd century, picking genes, that might be the norm. Imagine how you could screen for disease. You could pick the sex and the hair color. You could pick maybe height if you really wanted to. Like if you're going to live on a spaceship, you don't want to be as tall. You need to be a little shorter. Maybe you're not going to have as many nutrients coming into your body because you're living on another planet where it's harder to make them. So you want to have genes that help you do that. You want to look like grandpa? Designer babies, they're already a thing now. So maybe in 100 years, they could be everywhere. The process is safer, could be the norm.
It's wild to think of adaptation on an individual level, which just doesn't happen. Like the way that natural selection works, the way that evolution works, an individual doesn't involve. It's a population. It's what you see, different frequencies of certain adaptations or phenotypes, like the physical expressions of genes. Certain frequencies of those shift within a population over time, and that's what natural selection works on. But all of a sudden, you have the idea that certain individuals within a population could create adaptations within themselves. And that is going to completely rewrite at least a chapter of the book on what we know about evolution. Are we going to hand out those magic gene CRISPR pills to an entire population? Is every single human going to get these things?
Mars colonists are so far away, so there's probably some independence issues there. Everyone saw The Expanse. We all saw it. Language would, of course, have to evolve as well. Based on evolution, language might mean people are completely different. That cumulative culture won't line up. We also have to consider energy consumption. Something that I love to talk about is the Kardashev scale. It measures civilization's advancements. We've got type 1, 2, and 3 civilizations. 1 is planetary. They use the energy of their whole planet. 2 is stellar. They use the energy of a planetary system. And 3 is galactic, which is, crazy pants level of civilization. Can't even imagine that. But right now, we're like not even a 1, a 0.7 or something. We got energy, but every puff of our cars damages the only place we can survive. We are slowly polluting our fish tank, and we can't leave it. And that's a trade-off, and not a good one, I would argue. We borrow energy from future generations' prosperity every single day. So in 100 years, maybe we'd be closer to a 1 on the K scale. We'd be using solar, wind, and geothermal fusion energy, and we'll be getting the energy that we need without damaging the planet. Interesting, right? What do you think, audience? Make sure you let us know in the comments. I'm going to wrap up 100 years soon because we got to get to other things. But Ray Kurzweil, again, the singularity is coming. That man-machine merging would happen. He says it's going to happen in like 25 years, and we have no idea what that would look like. Probably pretty messy at first. Maybe Borgian. I mean, who's here to know? There are two things at play when it comes to these ideas, and that's Moore's law, which isn't a law, it's just an observation that transistors in a microchip double every 2 years, and it's generally held pretty true, very generally. But there's also Fuller's estimation, which is that human knowledge doubles every century until 1900. Then by 1945 it was doubling every 25 years, by 1982 it would double every year, and by that logic, by 2020 we would know twice as much about everything every 12 hours. Knowledge, of course, being the sum of everyone's understanding everywhere. All research, all discovery, big data, but also video and photos and metadata captured of us and our planet and our experience. As Anna will tell us, 99% of photos have already been taken, and they've been taken in my lifetime. In 2020, we're taking 380 billion photos a year, and that's only going up.
But, the material culture will still be important, because now, even when we do have historical records, historical records are written by one side of the observer of the observers of what happened, right? And so you have records of historical events, and then sometimes you have those records and you try to correlate them with the archaeological data, and what you find is that's not at all what happened.
Okay, so what about 1,000 years? It would still be type 1, obviously. Lots to learn and explore. We won't be type 2 yet, but we won't speak any language we'd recognize. Think of Vaughn's excellent Paper Girls comics. Those people are just slightly in the future, and they already have a different language, a different cumulative culture, different symbolism than we do. Even in the fairly near future, it would be pretty tough. I mean, Old English is not actually that old on this time scale, especially thanks to things like internet culture, where billions of us are using different symbolism, and it changes so fast. And the internet, think about the internet in thousands of years. Unless we go full Luddite, of course, the internet would be embedded within us. Adaptations have given way to evolution. What used to be an adaptation, like being able to hang out on Mars for a little longer or be able to eat fewer nutrients, that has just become the norm. Those people who had it at first now have spread those genes through huge parts, if not the entire population. And if you can do that, sex might just be for fun. And for no other reason, because you can do it all with point-and-click genetic engineering. Wouldn't even probably have to point and click anymore. In fact, by then, hopefully we've licked quantum mechanics, figured out fusion. We'd have so much energy, we couldn't even comprehend it now. In fact, it's likely inevitable that we will be able to upload and scan our brains into computers, especially if we figured out quantum mechanics. At this point, the singularity would be like super ancient history, like the medieval times, like older than the Renaissance to us. That's human 1000s to us, right?
So 1,000 years ago would have been 1020, the year 1020. So that was smack in the beginning of the medieval era for sort of Europe and the western part of the world. Nothing was industrialized. So production of things was happening on a moderate scale, maybe, because there were certainly city centers in countries all over the world that were producing stuff, but it was very much even if they were producing a lot of something, it was individual people or craftsmen or workshops making those things. There weren't factories, really, the way that we think about factories now. So it really wasn't until the 1700s, which was only 300 or so years ago, that we start seeing production of everything ramp up. Everything is slower. The world is sort of disjointed and disconnected. But now, if we move back 1,000 years to 2020, the world has, in some ways, gotten a lot smaller. Everyone is sort of hyper-connected. You can send a message, an emoji, a picture in, milliseconds. And the amount of production, the scale of production of stuff has skyrocketed. In terms of moving forward 1,000 years, I would expect there to be even more stuff, and I would expect the world to shrink a bit more, even as travel becomes faster, becomes more efficient, as things start to become even more automated. Maybe in 1,000 years there will be self-driving mail-carrying cars, or hey, hovercraft. Sure, I don't know, 1,000 years. Let's roll those dice.
Oh, I didn't even think about all the stuff. If we're thinking in terms of products and creations and like the ephemera of humanity, modifying our surroundings, like what Rick Potts was talking about earlier, would be on a level we can't even imagine in 1,000 years. We're already looking at 3D printing buildings. Buildings in 1,000 years could maybe build themselves using computer programs, algorithms. They could ask you what you want and know your history based on photos you've taken, based on information that you've put into the system. They could just build your perfect house. Cars could fly themselves, obviously, because they'd have so much information. And all of that would be using, hopefully, again, energy that's non-destructive to the planet. And if we've, again, figured out quantum mechanics, maybe we'll just teleport and we don't need to fly anywhere after all. Basically, I'm just saying that we're going to be the Asgardians. Technology will be indistinguishable from magic.
So it's not even gene editing, which is a magic all of its own, but it's external, technological advancements that might make us, I'm going to use heavy quotes and say better, right? To correct some of our archaic features from 1,000 years ago, But even like if we went back 1,000 years ago and someone got sick and dropped dead, the ability to say, I know what did that, would kind of be very witchcrafty or, at least seen as magic, because they didn't have germ theory. They didn't realize that there was a whole tiny, tiny world out there that was full of living things. And so if someone got sick and dropped dead, it was either, they were cursed or they were smote? God smote them? Smitten?
Yeah, they were smitten, so they dropped dead.
Smitified. They got smitified.
Smitified. I like that. Oh my God, this is so crazy. And we're not even to 10,000 years yet. Speaking of magic, human individual adaptation would be even more than point and click. Like if we're at genetic engineering now and we're doing just the rudimentary genetic engineering in 2020, by 2120, genetic engineering is going to be pretty interesting. I mean, look at how much we changed from 1900 to 2000. Now, just fast forward. Like Anna said earlier, look at the past to see where we're going. Perhaps we'll have some kind of nanotechnology that would just keep us safe, tiny little robots that have more power than what we can even imagine in a computer today. The fastest computer in the world now would be the size of a blood cell in 1,000 years. Smaller even, maybe. I mean, quantum computing would change everything. Adaptation would be so easy, we'd probably just have to think about it. That's insane. That's insane. I mean, we didn't get into this in our Leaving Earth series, so whoa. Germs in space would only be brought by us, so we'd probably have to engineer them too. And we could easily create a human society in free space. We wouldn't even have to go to a planet. You can just go into free space and build something. We've likely, in 1,000 years, cured aging by 3020, meaning we'd have to consider the population a lot. Today, we have something called the voluntary human extinction movement, and they're asking people not to breed to protect the environment. But in the future, in 1,000 years, wow. There would be concern on starships, cities on other planets, free space cities that are just floating at Lagrange points around, just like we talked about in the Leaving Earth series. Literally everywhere. This could be a huge, huge deal.
Well, one of the biggest differences between 2020 and 1020 is the amount of data that exists, because everything is digital now. And so in 1020, you were lucky if you knew how to read and write. In 1,000 years, there is going to be so much more information about just the average person's life, which is something that can be really hard to get at in the archaeological record, because often from these major world civilizations, what you see are the monuments, you see the inscriptions, you see if there are texts, they tend to be kind of administrative texts, and you get to see the lives of the elites, you get to see the lives of the people who were making decisions or who were in charge. You don't necessarily get to see the lives of everyday people unless you're able to get material information from a specific context like a home. And in that case, you can start to reconstruct what everyday life was like. And I think the archaeology of the past few decades, maybe even of the past 100 years, has started to really turn towards getting super interested in the average person rather than this king or this pharaoh or this, this elite person or this court, right? It was what did it mean to live at Teotihuacan, or what did it mean to live as a regular person in ancient Egypt, right? So the fact that like Reddit and Instagram and Twitter and everyone who is online and digital is constantly updating the internet about their lives. And so there is this vast repository. If that's available in 3020, that's the kind of information that if we go back 1,000 years, we really don't have. And so, in Canterbury Tales, it's not like wife of Bath tweets, "This pilgrimage sucks, LOL." Like, it's not, you don't see that. And the idea that you could see that 1,000 years from now is wild. Like being an archaeologist 1,000 years from now, you have a lot more to work with. And, God help the person who has to sift through everybody's tweets. But maybe there will be an algorithm or like AI by then that can do that for you. So this is my AI grad student.
This is 078382858A. I just go by 2A.
I exist to process. Please teach me to love.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Finally, let's do 10,000 because we don't want to go on this forever. Note, almost no science fiction is written 10,000 years into the future. It's extremely rare. And the ones that are things like Arthur C. Clarke's City in the Stars, where the people are small and they live in the small city here on Earth, but there's nothing else on the planet. And the person who is the protagonist of the book is looking out of the city, but he's the only one, or actually they are the only one who does that, because there's no gender, because why would you need it? 10,000 years from now, we've probably figured out that you don't really need these societal systems in order to make a functioning community. I mean, even Star Trek and some of our most heady science fiction is only a couple hundred years in the future. Blade Runner was last year, because it's so hard to know where we're going to be that far in the future. But I would hope, let's say 10,000 years, I would hope our K scale, we're at a type 2. We've got space-based solar collection, fusion, full genetic changes to ourselves, sex by this point definitely for fun, not for breeding. We would be unrecognizable. Depending on how much we changed, we might not even be considered the same species as we are now. Imagine.
This is the scale at which I think we would see some real genetic changes, if anything. Because this is if we go from 10,000 years ago to now, this is where we see some of the changes that came from the development of agriculture. We went from hunter-gatherers mostly to agriculturalists. And so that changed our genome. And so I think, I'm not sure what behavior will cause it. Like, I'm not sure what we'll do to spark a real genetic change in 10,000 years. But I bet that there will be differences in the human genome that are directly a result of some major change that we make.
This is, of course, entirely hypothetical. But no matter what, Earth is going to look like a different planet no matter what we do. Because at a 10,000 year timescale, geologic time starts to come into play. For example, so look at this time lapse. It was created by the University of Zurich. From 21,000 years ago until 10,000 years in the future, Earth looks different. And if people are on Mars, the moons of Jupiter, and are in other solar systems, they're going to have to adapt as populations, as Anna said, to do whatever they need to do to live on those planets and those moons and in those places. They're going to have to adapt to lower gravity, higher radiation, different levels of nutrition. And experts think that that could happen. I mean, actually, experts have thought about it in as little as several thousand years.
So there are populations, like up on the Tibetan Plateau, those populations have a gene that allows them to just sort of exist better at high altitudes where the air is much thinner, and populations that don't have ancestry that would have benefited from that don't. So things like that, like there will be portions of the population in 10,000 years that have genes that allow them to do something more effectively, something different. And I have no idea what that will be, but it's exciting to speculate wildly about it.
Obviously, the Jetsons were adapted to living so high in the sky, right? They had to live in a thinner atmosphere all the time, so they must have adapted. Anyway, what color will our skin be? Whatever color we want, obviously. We'll have understood our entire genome for an age by that point. We'll have computer technology for thousands of years. It will be unimaginable what we can do. It will literally be like magic to us. Humans will be both one race and also likely a different species from today, completely unknowable to the humans of now. They probably wouldn't even focus on physicality. Why? Because they've had nanotechnology for thousands of years. They could be as strong or as dense or as light or as tall or as old or as young and look whatever they want. Who knows? I mean, it's amazing to even consider. The thing is, if we allow climate change to continue on Earth, that debt will come due, and the nature, like the Lannisters, will always pay their debts. We don't get to do any of these things. No cities on the moon, no free space satellites filled with human beings, no spacefarers, no conquering or no understanding of all of the species that are left on the planet and the oceans, no understanding of ourselves. What do you think we'll look like in 10,000 years? What will archaeology look like in 10,000 years?
We are limited to some extent by the scarcity of materials in the archaeological record relative to what there might be 1,000 years from now with everyone's Instagram, right? But at the same time, every time technology improves, we get a better shot at reconstructing that picture, even as those remains are getting older and older and older. So there's like two things happening where everything's getting older and older and disappearing from the record, but at the same time, technology's getting better and better and better. And at some point, those intersect. And so I hope that it just, the trend continues, that there will be just more and more and more that we can learn because there are these analyses that allow us to ask new types of questions.
Archaeology is so much more fun than just digging in the dirt. It's understanding cultural impacts, statistical data, population data, and microdata and metadata, and understanding the difference between different species and skulls based on something as small as a fragment of bone. Someday we'll have 078382885A, the archaeology AI, to help us out, but for now, we're gonna have to do it ourselves. And if you're curious how, you should try Brilliant. Brilliant has curated sequences of problems that help you master all sorts of amazing technical subjects. Statistics might seem really heady and difficult, but Brilliant will help you really get it. You think, oh, Trace just writes science videos. He doesn't need to use math, right? You're wrong. I've calculated the number of bathtubs in the ocean, the speed you might be traveling through the universe right now as you sit and watch this video, and a bunch of other strange and amazing things. And I couldn't have done it without understanding at least a bit about math and science to start, and I've just built on that over time. And that is what Brilliant is good at. You can learn the basics and grow. Not to mention having a basic understanding of math and science in your brain's tool belt is just awesome because of all the extra layers of concepts that it can open up for you to explore. They've got courses on statistics and orbital mechanics, genetics and probability. You can even learn about evolution and biology through the lens of math and scientific thinking. And with Brilliant, we can learn a little bit every day. All you gotta do, go to brilliant.org/trace, grab the link down in the description, satisfy your curiosity, learn new things, get more curiosity. It's a win-win. Again, brilliant.org, sign up for free. The first 200 people that go to my link will get 20% off their annual premium subscription at Brilliant, and trying it supports making more of the show you're currently watching, which hopefully you like, so thanks. So now I've shepherded you from millions of years in the past to just a skip into our human future. A lot of the last episode I recognize is much more hypothetical than we normally do on the show, but I thought it would be really fun and I hope you really liked it, so make sure you tell me about it in the comments. Do you see us differently now? Because I definitely do. I think of us as way more fragile than I did before I started looking at how we came to be over these millions of years. We didn't strong arm our way into the future. We didn't win the race against the Homo neanderthalensis or the Homo erectus or the Denisovan. We are still out here racing, and they just handed us the baton. Just handed it to us. We have that legacy, and it's trapped within our history, our fossil record, and our future. Yes, their failure meant our success, but our failure would mean their failure too. Not to put any pressure on you personally, of course. Humankind is not extra special. We're not some crazy unique thing. We've got some good traits passed down from the ancients to us. And right now, we happen to be holding the human baton for the blink of an eye. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching this series of episodes on human origins. I really hope you loved it. If you did, let me know. You can find me at Trace Dominguez on Twitter, Instagram, even on Patreon if you really loved it and want to support the show. You can find me everywhere on the internet. Just look for Trace Dominguez. And of course, you can subscribe here and leave a comment down below. I read every comment. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I have done a lot these last 5 episodes, but I couldn't have done it without my researcher, Hannah Thomasy, and our editor, Jose Gomez, and of course, Flavia, and that's our new kitten. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Make sure you stick around for all of the episodes coming in the future of the show. You can do that by subscribing. Super easy to do. You can also find me anywhere on the internet at Trace Dominguez, and even on Patreon. Thanks so much. And from little Barley and me, bye-bye.